All right, so for today's code along, we are going to, let me share my screen with you. We're going to be introduced to a new, well, it's not very new, but for us, it's kind of new, a new CSS property that is called the writing mode. So let me make this nice and big. All right, so the writing mode, what that allows us to do, instead of typing horizontally, we get to type vertically. The other thing that I added to this, and notice how the HTML part is only like maybe 4 lines. The CSS is where it starts getting a little heavy. And then I also added a little bit of JavaScript for my advanced students because I don't want you guys to forget your JavaScript. In this case, what I'm doing, and there's several ways of doing this. Joe, if he was on this code along, might argue that you can quickly do this by using a CSS keyframe, but you can do all kinds of things with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I want to go ahead and make sure that you're not forgetting your JS. So that's why I didn't just do a keyframe. I did some JS. What we're wanting to remember, how to select, right? How to select an element and how to manipulate. So 2 parts, select and manipulate. And my beginner students, you're not there yet, so you don't have to do the JavaScript part, but at least you can start seeing how JavaScript will affect your web page. It makes it more interactive, makes it a little bit more fun. It's the logic behind everything. So pretty cool. You guys excited? Let's go ahead and do this. We can do a CodePen or we can do Sublime. Which one should we do?
I just opened up CodePen, which is super cool. I never knew about this one.
Yeah, it's awesome. We like to use it and we like to use it in Codealongs and Codeoffs, and then that's how you can build your online portfolio. Or you can, of course, create a website, and then that can be your online portfolio. Why is these monitors? For people who are not using their microphone at the moment, go ahead and just turn off by clicking on the little microphone down here. That way when you're not speaking, it doesn't have all that staticky stuff.
I'm fixing it right now.
Okay. Not a problem. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and use Sublime because I know some of you may not have an account yet with CodePen. And we're going to be doing 3 things. You don't have to do the JavaScript if you don't want to. So if you want, you could just create 2 files. But I'm going to create 3 files because I'm going to add some JavaScript. So the first thing I'm going to do, just to get us started, go ahead and change this from norm or plain text to HTML and set up our boilerplate. So I use Emmet, so I just can do that. In CodePen, you don't even have to do this. You can just open up your div and go on, but when you're doing it through Sublime, you do have to go ahead and set it up this way. I'm going to save this as index.html because that's generally the rule of thumb when you're creating a homepage for your website. Index.html, remember everything has to be in the same folder for everything to work. So I'm just going to put it on my desktop. You can put it on your thumb drive. The next file I need to open is my CSS file. So I'm going to save this one as styles.css. And I want to keep that in my same folder. And then the last one is going to be my JS, my JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and save this one. I don't know why that keeps happening. As scripts.js, because that's usually what you call.
Does mine sound better?
A little bit. It's still a little staticky.
Okay.
Okay. So now to link all of these. Who can tell me how to link my style sheet? What do I do?
Gotta add the style to the head.
Yes, and how do I do that?
link rel.
Ooh, I got a question. How did you get Sublime to start a new HTML? You just open up a new file, and you save it as index.html. You gotta make sure that you put that extension at the end. That way you're telling Sublime what it is. This is an HTML page. This is a CSS page. Does that answer your question, Jeremy? Remember, if your style sheet is in a folder, like if it's in a styles folder, you have to include that in the file name. In this case, I didn't put it inside a subfolder. I just put it inside the same root folder, so I can just leave it as styles.css. How would I link my JavaScript? The one I have up here.
Script source.
Script source, yes. And where would you put it? It didn't autofill HTML. Oh, I used, if you have Emmet, I use just an exclamation mark and then tab. If you don't have Emmet, then I think it works if you just do HTML tab. Did it? Oh, then you have to make sure that down here it says HTML.
What is a tag for a boilerplate on CodePen again? Is it exclamation mark tab?
You know, I think they took it away because I think I tried it the other day and it didn't work. But yeah, it used to be the exclamation mark. It used to be that as well. Did you try maybe using HTML and seeing if that worked? I feel like they took it away.
Yeah,
And I don't know
it's
what the
weird.
shortcut is now.
I Google it real quick.
You mean for the Sublime template they do?
Yes, exclamation mark tab, right. Good job. CodePen, yeah, they used to have the same shortcut. It used to do exclamation mark and then tab, and it would fill up your boilerplate. But I
Oh, okay.
tried it last time and I don't think it worked. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm switching over to Visual Studio right now.
Yeah, Visual Studio, VS Code. Let me try. Let me see. Pen. And it used to. I love their little puns down here. What a functional programmer's favorite animal? A lamb. Duh. Okay, let me see here. Then tab. Yeah, they no longer do it anymore. That's so weird. I guess you don't really need a boilerplate for them. You can just get started. Like you can just start typing div.
Yeah, I think here I just code without all of the other stuff.
Yeah, whereas Sublime or any text editor, you got to set it all up.
Yeah.
But this is cool because then it saves everything onto your dashboard and it kind of collects all of your work that you've done and other people can see it as well.
Yeah.
But you
I
can
like
see
how
it.
the web page updates real time too.
Yeah, it's live. Yeah, that is really cool. Oh shoot. Okay. So that's CodePen. Yeah, I don't know what happened to the shortcut, but it used to. It used to work. All right. So for JS, how can we link our JS? And this is more for my advanced students who have gone through JavaScript.
Yeah, I don't know yet.
You gotta just make sure that the file name is what's always important. If this one doesn't have an S in it, then you don't put an S when you link it. Oh, let me make this a little bit bigger so everyone can kind of see it a little better. Board wrap is on. Okay, to make sure that everything is linked. So let's go ahead and open this up. Right click, open in browser. Oh, it showed up on my other monitor. Ah, this thing is such a pain. Oh my goodness. Hold on. Let me see if I can do something else. It's such a pain to work with two monitors sometimes. They don't want to cooperate.
I'm using my.
Hi, Marianne. What'd you say, Albina?
I'm using my television.
I know that's, yeah. Okay. So to make sure that everything is linked, what you can do quickly, just to make sure that because that's the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure everything is linked. So maybe put a nice background color just to see that it works. You can always change this later on, but just to make sure that your CSS is linked. Oh, did I save it? Also make sure to save. Save all. Refresh. That's linked, right? And the other thing you want to make sure is linked is your JavaScript. So here, a really quick rule of thumb to just make it easy on you guys to make sure your JavaScript is linked is just to put alert. And this will come up as an alert box. So watch this. Let's see, file save all, and then refresh. And you get an alert box and it says, this page says I'm linked. So now I know for sure that my CSS is linked correctly to my home page, that my JavaScript is linked correctly to my home page. Now, what would some people call this right now, this HTML page that we created with the link, with the CSS style sheet linked, with the JavaScript link, and pretty much everything ready to go? Starts with a T. It should be something you should be learning about in your web development book when you're creating your fitness website and you're reusing something over and over again before you fill it up with content.
A template.
A template, that's right. That way you don't have to redo this over and over again. Maybe go ahead and just save it as template, and then on your index, you actually start filling it up with the content. Good job. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with
Sorry, just had a little tickle in my throat.
It's okay, Jess. If you're not talking, you can just turn off the microphone right here on the Blackboard Collaborate. Turn off the microphone, and that'll mute you. And then turn it back on when you're ready to tell us something. Okay, so the HTML part, all we're doing on this side, we're just going to go ahead and make a div, a little container, to hold our text. And I used heading 2 for my text, for my Happy Easter. But you guys, if you want to use something else, you can. But this is what I used. I used H2. And I put in the first one, I put happy. And then on the second one, I use another H2. And I want them kind of in separate blocks. So that's why I put them in 2. And then I put Easter. And if you guys don't celebrate Easter, or maybe you want to change it up to Good Friday, I don't care about what text you put in here. I just want to kind of make it relevant to what's happening tomorrow or what's happening right now. Okay, that's all for the HTML side, believe it or not. So let's see what this looks like. Save that, refresh over here. Oh, this alert is going to drive me crazy, so let's go ahead and get that out of the way. You can comment this out, Command or Control, if you want to keep it there, or you can just delete it. We just wanted to make sure it was linked. And it's definitely not going to stay red, so don't worry. We're not going to keep it red. Okay, so notice how right now our text is going horizontal. It's going this way, left to right. We're going to make it go vertical. And that is a CSS property that is called, anybody? What is the CSS property called? I will change that for us. How that looks. Writing mode. Okay, so first things first, I do not like that background color. So I'm going to choose some colors that might be, and I'm going to make it easier on myself. I'm going to go ahead and go to UI gradients. I'm going to choose some Eastery colors. So every time I think of Easter, I think of like cotton candy colors, like that blue, pink, purple. So I'm going to look for that. You guys can choose whichever color you want. This one looks pretty good. I like this one. To copy the code, you just go on over to this symbol. I always just copy the last one, the last line, because if you read the comment, it says it's pretty good for pretty much all browsers. These are your fallback ones for like anyone who's still using Internet Explorer, things like that, or old versions of stuff. And you don't have to copy the comment. You just have to copy the CSS. And there's a chapter, I think, in the book where it teaches you how you come up with this code. You go from this color to this color. It's pretty much all it is. Turn your word wrap on so you can actually see everything. Okay, so that's it for this one. I'm done with that one. So now let's save. And hopefully we're done with that red nasty color that we had going on. Oh no, what happened to my browser window? Cody, come back, don't leave, we're not done. Okay, so it changed it. Oh, you can't see it. Let me show you. So change the background to a more Eastery color. And that is just review, nothing new there. We did this last time. If you've been following my Codealongs now for almost a year, then you know that this is something that I pretty much just always start off with. But for my new students, the more practice, the better. So that is a gradient. The next thing we're going to do, focusing on our CSS, we're going to, the font family. Let me show you. Oh, there. Wow, that was weird. The font family. So you can choose font families from like Google Fonts. There's a bunch of new stuff that's happening that they're coming out with different fonts, but one that's already, I believe, is one called, and if this isn't here, then we'll have to go find it, because when I did this, I did it on CodePen, and they may have already embedded that. Oh yeah, it looks like it did. It changed it a little bit. So that's the font family, and you can use any font you want. If you go to Google Fonts, there's a ton that are free, and you just have to make sure that it's a two-step process, that you put their CDN, I believe it's a CDN. You put that in the head, and then you put the font family in the CSS. But Google Fonts will do that for you. So any font you like, all here. And like, for example, this one, it'll say selected. It'll tell you, would you like this, blah, blah, blah. So then this right here goes inside your head. This right here goes inside your CSS. So I might as well show you that now. So you copy this, boom, and it tells you embed a font, copy the code into the head of your HTML. So it doesn't matter where you put it in the head. it can go over here, it can go over here. As long as it's inside the head, then that's fine. So then the CSS part would be this part. And let's see how that looks. Oh, too many semicolons. File, save all. And let's go back to our, whoa, that definitely changed up the look. All right, we're good with Google Fonts. Am I going too fast? Hello out there. Did I lose you guys?
I'm just looking for a great font to choose.
Ooh, yeah, that's always the hard part. Go ahead, go ahead. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, let's mess around with the div. Okay, for my newbies, this is going to be something new. We're going to be using something called display grid. I think Codecademy covers it. I know the book does not because this is fairly new to the web development world. I believe it came out like 2016, 2017. And I know you may think, oh my God, that's years ago. But that's really not that long ago. There was something you would use called float to help align our elements on a page. Then we moved on to using display flex, which is really cool. And then grid came out and just changed the game. So on our div, we're going to make our container flexible. This part right here, we're going to make it into a grid so that we can align these two elements a little bit easier without having to use float like the book makes you use. So we're going to target our div. We're going to say display grid. And what I like to do is every time I put a new property, I'll save it and refresh to see what it's doing. And right now you won't see it do anything because we have to tell it how many columns we want. So there's something called grid template, and it'll help you out. Sublime does really good at helping you out. We want this one, grid dash template dash columns. Make sure if you're typing this out, you include that S at the end. Some people forget that S and then it doesn't work and they start freaking out and they're like, Missy, my grid template column isn't working. And I go over and I'm like, oh, you just forgot an S. And the way that grid templates work is they use a unit of measurement, to throw another one at you, called FR, which is fraction of. So it sounds a little mathematical, but it's not that bad. All you're doing is you're telling it, I want to use 2 columns, 1 fraction of, 1 fraction. If you want to use 3 columns, you just add another one. If you just want 1 column, you just add that one. In this case, we want 2 columns. Because remember, if you looked at my Happy Easter, it was happy was on 1 column, and then the second one, it was Easter. Oh, in this case, it's Good Friday. Good will be in 1 column, Friday will be in another column. So save this and see what this does. All right, so just like I said, good is in 1 column, Friday is in another column. To make this look a little bit better, let's kind of center it a little bit. And if you need to learn more about CSS grids, we did a Codealong before on it, so you can always go back in my Codealongs, or I can show you about the grids again, or just go ahead and just CSS grid. And there are so many resources that will teach you this way better than I can, because they put together all kinds of examples. W3 Schools does a good job. CSS Tricks does a great job. But definitely get yourself familiar with CSS grids, because that is the newest, latest, and greatest. And it'll make your life so much easier. I thought I had a message, but I don't see it. Why is it saying I have a message? Okay, that's weird. Okay, so everyone got 2 columns. Did this work for everyone? The next thing, awesome. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use something called justify content. And this is, again, just something that is part of CSS grids. We want it to be center. Save that. Kind of scooted it down a little bit. And you won't see everything happen like we see at the end until you add a couple more properties and then it'll all come together. And this, the justify content and the align content, is all part of the CSS grids. So when you look over here at the complete guide, it'll show you what these two are doing. And you'll see it as soon as I flip these vertically. You'll see what that does. Okay, another thing I'm going to add to my div, I want it to take up all of the screen. So you put 100 VH. This is a great trick when you are trying to view something in mobile. This is just the viewport height. A viewport is just a window. So when you put 100 VH, it's going to take up all of the vertical space. Just like width 100% will take up all of the width. So this is going to be very handy when you want these to stretch out and take up all of the width. And look at that. As soon as I added that, these two properties activated. And we're like, oh, okay, we're centering it according to a 100 viewport height. So I'm going to center it at like 50 viewport height. So now it's centered. And now let's target our H2s. One thing to remember, if I do something in this H2, it's going to affect both H2s. What would I want to add if I only wanted to target, for example, good, and I didn't want it to affect Friday? What would I do to do that? Like, let's say I want to flip good this way, and I want to flip Friday the other way. I want to flip this one 180 degrees. I want to flip Friday 360 degrees. What would I have to do? What?
Add classes.
Yes! Good job, Alvina. So on the H2, the first one, the good one, let's go ahead. Actually, since I'm going to be using JavaScript, and I'm not going to be reusing this class again, I'm going to add an ID. An ID is very, very powerful when you're using JavaScript, and if you're only using it one time. So in this case, I'm only going to use it one time. So it's going to be an ID. You could use a class, especially if you're going to use it over and over again. And you can call it whatever you want that makes sense. And whatever you call it here has to match whatever you call it in your CSS and especially in your JavaScript, because ID names mean the world in JavaScript. Okay, so I just added an ID to my H2 because I'm going to be using that to have this one do something differently than this one. So now I'm on my H2 CSS. And what the first thing I'm going to do is I want to change that color of my font. I don't want it to look black. I kind of want it to look a little bit more Eastery colors. But first, so we can actually see it, see our text, let's put a font size and let's do 100 pixels so we can see it nice and big. You know what? This actually looks pretty cool already. Maybe we should just leave it at that. Okay. So to change the color, what would I use?
Color.
Color. I'm going to use one called fuchsia. Oops. Did not do that right. I could not spell this word for the life of me, so I had to look it up, but I believe I got it right this time. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of like a hot pink. Ugh, it doesn't look good in this font family. I don't really like it. But let's see. Let's make it white. That looks a little bit. Remember, UI UX principles. You want your visitors to be able to read this. And even though you might think the font is really cool looking, if they're not able to read it, then it's no good for anybody, right? So I might change that file family. I don't know if I really like it. I might change it back to what I had it as, if you guys don't mind. And you guys don't have to do this. If you like the way it looks, then that's fine.
Is there a property to add a border to font?
Yeah, girl, I was just gonna cover that. It's like you can read my mind.
Oh,
It's not, well, it's not the border, but it's something a little bit cooler. And I haven't really researched that one, I don't think. But there's something that's really cool that I'm about to show you right now, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, how can I make this pop a little bit more? So there's something called a text shadow. So this is what you can use. And then if you look at all the other stuff, it might give you some other cool stuff. So I'm going to go back to making this fuchsia because I'm going to make my shadow. Oops, I already spelled it wrong. I'm going to make my shadow white. So let me save this and I'll show you what I mean. So my text shadow, it's going to require 4 attributes. You need to first put units of measurement and then the color, kind of like the box shadow, very similar to that. How does that look, Albina? Do you like that?
yeah, that looks great.
Sweet. So yeah, I researched that a little bit too because I was thinking the same thing as you. I was like, this looks very flat. How can I kind of make it pop a little bit? So yeah, lots of cool stuff you can do on CSS. A lot of people would just go to Illustrator and start doing this. But if you want to be able to manipulate it a little bit more, then go ahead and do it on your CSS. That's going to help you a lot more. Okay, we haven't gotten to the cool part. We're about to do what's going to flip this around so that way it's not horizontal, it's vertical. Let me just add a couple more properties to this. Let's put a margin of 0. This is going to help so when we flip it, it kind of takes up all of the container. It doesn't try to add any spaces. And let's center the text. And here's the cool part. Oops, I'm spelling everything wrong. Let's go ahead and flip these. So this centered it a little bit. And let's flip them. So this is where we're going to add that cool, super cool writing mode CSS property. So just like it sounds, writing mode, but you have to make sure you put that little hyphen, the dash, and you have to say vertical, and it already tries to help you out. Left to right, right to left. We're going to use that one. So let's see what this does. And remember, it's under the H2, so that means it's going to affect both of these words. Did I save it? I did. Okay. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
So that is a cool little CSS property that I wanted to show you. Still doesn't look like the way that I have it on mine. So let's go ahead and change that. Oh, the other thing I forgot to do. I have on mine, I have it all uppercase. And instead of having to delete all this text and say, oh man, I forgot, my client wants everything uppercase, I got to change all the content to uppercase. You can quickly do that by going into your CSS and putting text transform uppercase. And when you do that, it'll go ahead and capitalize all your letters. Okay, what else? Okay, that's what I need to do. We added the ID rotate because we want this guy, this word right here, to flip the other way. We want to rotate it so that it's kind of facing Friday. And that way it looks a little better. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have it as ID equals rotate. So we got to go to our CSS and make a new one. And since it's an ID, we're going to use hashtag and whatever we called it. So in this case, we called it rotate. And that makes sense because we're going to rotate it. So let's rotate it. We're going to use the transform property. And remember, if you're wondering how come the book hasn't covered this, the book can't cover all these CSS properties. It would be a huge book. So all of this is just, you know, if you have a question like, I really want this to do this, then you look it up on Google, I promise you, you will find it in all kinds of websites. And that's why it's not in the book. Okay, we're going to rotate it 180 degrees. Because remember, 360 degrees is a full turn. So it just go back to the same spot. 180 degrees is halfway. Oh no, it didn't do it. What did I miss? Did I save it? Yay! Just didn't save it. How cool is that? Is that looking more and more like our example?
Yeah, it looks good.
Sweet. How's everyone else doing? Did you guys get this far? Anybody else out there except for besides Albina?
Here, this is Eddie.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it.
Awesome. So let's do, oh, we got something. Still trying. Okay, not a problem. And I'll share this. I have it on my CodePen, so I'll just share my CodePen link so that you can look at all my code after the Codealong is done. So actually, I'll share it right now. And you can see everything that I've done, except on my CodePen, it says Happy Easter instead of Good Friday. But here's the link so you can see all the code. Uh-oh, I lost my browser. Okay, so a couple more things that I'm going to do. But pretty much for my beginner students, like this is more than good enough. You've learned so much already about the grid, about the writing mode. Another thing that I wanted to do was if you put rotate and colon hover, this is going to allow visitors to know that, hey, this element might do something, because when I hover above it, it changes its color. And this is the one that we're going to flip using JavaScript. So the other thing, so that people are more inclined to click on it, is instead of having your cursor just look like it's not going to do anything, like a type tool, make it change by just using CSS. Change your cursor to a pointer. And that's really going to tell your visitors, click me, I do something. Right now, of course, I don't do anything because there's no JavaScript. But that's a good way to go ahead and let your visitor know that this element is going to allow them to do something if they click on it. Hover and pointer. Okay, let's go ahead and use JavaScript. And then that's it. And then we're done with this Codealong. I guess I'll keep that there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to store my my selected element into a variable. And you could use let, you could use const. I know those are the new things that everyone's trying to adapt to. Or you can still use var. That is completely still acceptable. So, oh, I almost called it happy because this used to be happy and now it's good. So I'm going to store it in something called good because you want your variables to make sense. Then in order to select that element, there's different ways of doing it. Because it's an ID, what can you use to select it? My advanced students?
Document, get element by ID.
Perfecto. Document. And remember that camel case. You gotta make sure you capitalize that E. Get element, capitalize that B, and capitalize that D. Document dot get element by ID. View wrap text. I wish this would just be default because it's such a pain to have to always turn it on. Then you have to tell it, which ID am I selecting? So which ID are we selecting?
Rotate.
Rotate. There's different ways of doing this. You can do this all in one line in JavaScript, but I like to separate it so that you don't forget the setup. Select. So this is just selecting it. It's not going to do anything. You can save this and you can refresh your page. And right now it's selecting it. It's like, okay, I'm good to go. What are we doing with this? So then that's the two-step process, the second part. Now you're going to manipulate it. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to add an event listener, which we learned maybe 4 Codealongs ago. Event listener, before the world got turned upside down. And you're going to say, okay, listen for, I already messed up. Add event listener. Listen for a click. When the user clicks this element, perform this function. Right? Okay, still with me? And then you're going to tell it what function to perform. I like to set everything up first so that I don't forget. Let me go ahead and add my semicolon to close this. Then under my function, I use the keyword this because that just means it's going to select, instead of you having to retype, good. So instead of having to retype your variable, you can just use this, and that's just a keyword that will know what you're referring to. And you're going to say, okay, I'm going to choose the style transform. That's what we're targeting so that we can flip this. And I want you to manipulate it by rotating it negative 90 degrees. You can still rotate negative. And let's see if this works. And then don't forget to close this. And again, there's different ways of doing this. And now when you click it, it should rotate negative 90 degrees. Did it work for you guys?
Not yet.
Okay. And that is it for the Codealong. Any questions before I stop the recording? How long has it been? Oh, it's been less than an hour. Not bad. Remember, my new students, I don't expect you to know the JavaScript part. I know that is completely like foreign language to you, but the more I expose it to you earlier on, the more comfortable you'll feel once you get to this JavaScript part. Because the most feedback that I get from my students is, oh my God, JavaScript is so hard. Because if you think about it, HTML and CSS are semantic languages. They make sense. They're markup languages and everything just makes sense. Like whatever you type, you're like, oh, that makes sense. JavaScript, it's a programming language. So it is a completely different animal. But if you can master JavaScript, you're going to have no problems when you go into like .NET and start working with other programming languages. So the more you feel comfortable doing this earlier on, the easier it'll be when you get to that OCP. Because remember, you're only going to have 6 weeks during that OCP, and that's not enough time to learn JavaScript. But we are only allowed to do our program for a year. So we have to just go ahead and fit all of this in there. And that's why the earlier, the better if you get exposed to this. Okay, any questions about our Codealong?
My this style transform doesn't seem to be affecting my code.
Okay, so let's go ahead and troubleshoot. Let me go ahead and stop the recording And then what you can do is you can actually share your screen. So I'll stop sharing mine and you can share yours.
Okay.
All right, cool. Anybody else for the good of the group? I keep saying I have a message, but I don't see it. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording. Stay safe out there, wash your hands, use your Lysol.